Welcome to the Women in Industry podcast. My name is Kirsty Davies-Chinnock, and today I'm talking to Dr. Laura Baker, who's the head of production management and development at Tata Steel. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations in 26 countries and commercial offices in more than 35 countries. I'm sure you all know the name. Welcome, Laura. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm very excited to be here today.
Well, I was stalking your LinkedIn. I'm doing that quite a lot at the moment, which is just great fun. Um, and you did your first degree in material science and engineering at Swansea.
Yeah.
What drew you to that area?
I, yeah, it's interesting. Throughout my childhood, I was one of those kids who was just fascinated with how things were worked and how things were made. I was like the typical kid with a screwdriver taking the video recorder to pieces, not much to my parents' dismay. I've always been fascinated with how things work. I mean, for those of a certain vintage who might remember play school, they always used to go through the round window and it was always some kind of factory. And I was always fascinated with all of that kind of stuff. I didn't know at that point it was actually called engineering. I thought it was just like being nosy about how things worked. But yeah, I've always had that kind of curiosity, nosiness, whatever you want to call it, about the way things are made, the way things work, and wanting to kind of really get into the background of how things work.
I that resonates so much. When I was little, I never really played with dolls
No.
until we did a project where you had to build a bedroom or something with like working lights, and I just built all these little rooms just so I could get the lights working or a radio that went on and things for the dolls. Um, and after that first degree, you did your doctorate in engineering. Did you go straight into your postgrad?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think, obviously doing my undergraduate in Swansea in material science and engineering, obviously there was a big steel content to that. And for those of people who maybe don't know the geography, Swansea is about 10 miles away from Port Talbot, which is obviously the biggest steel site in the UK. So there's a certain connection between Swansea University and Tata Steel, and still is. Um, so it was one of those kind of inevitabilities, really. It was kind of, I'd done my undergraduate, I'd done okay in it, but I wasn't really ready to finish learning at that point. I wanted to do a bit more. I was quite excited to learn some more. Again, that curiosity kind of coming out. But I also didn't really want to do a standard PhD. I didn't see myself as being a sort of lab-based
Mm.
engineer. So the engineering doctorate scheme, as it was called then, was perfect for me because it was sponsored. My project was sponsored by what was British Steel back in those days. It was a 4-year program. The money was pretty good, which when you're coming out as an undergraduate, even in those days, was nice. Um, and it meant I could do a 4-year research project based in British Steel in their research facilities in Wales, and have like a 4-year interview really, um, with the company. So it was a great transition from kind of undergraduate studies into the world of work while still kind of learning and developing my own skills and qualifications. So yeah, it was a really nice segue for me into that industry.
And when you were doing that, was there any particular aspects of the degree, any placement areas that really sort of piqued your interest?
I've always been fascinated by the sort of the product side of it, what we actually make and sell to our customers and how our customers use it. So my project during that doctorate was actually a product development project, developing a product for the automotive sector. In fact, it is still used in most of the cars made in the UK today. So that's a great kind of legacy, if you like. But
That's a wonderful legacy.
but I think it's that, the reality of making something from a bunch of rocks. Effectively, we
Yeah.
make something that our customers turn into products that we use every day. There's like that sort of circularity of it I just find fascinating. Um, so yeah, I've always been that way inclined rather than the sort of processing side. I've always been much more interested in the product and how it gets used by our customers.
And when you'd finished your second degree, you went, was that when you went to Chorus? And
Yeah,
what was your first role there?
so my first role again, I mean, because of that interest in how steel was used, I went and became a customer technical support engineer. So it was effectively working with our customers to help them use our steel. And I focused in the automotive sector. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the automotive sector. They're pretty challenging as customers. They've got very specific requirements. So yeah, working with Nissan, JLR, Toyota, all of the UK OEMs in terms of obviously any complaints that they had, but also how they could get better value from using our steel, obviously down gauging, lightweighting, all of those kind of challenges that still go on today. And it was a deliberate choice of mine as well to go sort of outside of my comfort zone. A lot of my colleagues at the time went into sort of traditional technical roles within the steel company. I wanted to go and learn something different again, and go and learn about customers and the commercial environment. And I'm so glad I did, because it kind of broadens your horizon so much when you're working with customers. You see so many different types of manufacturing, different parts of the UK, and Europe, but predominantly UK manufacturing. And yeah, it's just given me a passion for the whole UK manufacturing industry, really.
I mean, over your career, you've worked in a variety of sort of different areas. You've got your customer facing roles. You've done supply chain management. You've done R&D and product portfolio. So within all those different sectors, it's still working towards the same end result. Um, and the teams that you've worked with, obviously they're all going to be have a different range of skills and backgrounds. Did you still keep learning as you were managing teams?
Yeah, and I think, I've been managing teams now probably maybe 15 years or so, various different sizes of teams. But I mean, I've been really fortunate in that in the most cases, those teams have been sort of professional engineers. So they have quite a different work ethic, if you like, than some other parts of the organization. But I learn every day. I mean, I'm at a point now in my career where I don't actually do very much myself. My team are the ones that do all the great work. My job is to make it as easy as possible for them to be the best that they can possibly be. And I love that people side of the role now, and really learning about how to develop myself so that I can be the best leader I can be for my team, so that they can deliver the best results that they can. And I think that's sort of opened up a whole new area of learning and development in terms of how to get the best out of people. And fascinating. That's going to be a lifelong project.
I always look at it as you sort of move up and develop yourself as a leader. You sort of get to sort of like, if you like, you're the conductor of the orchestra,
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
then you realise actually no, I need to be the composer and enable someone else to be the conductor, and it's just moving along that sort of stage, and we all learn and develop. And you're a fellow of the Institute of Metals, Minerals and Mining, and you're chair of the Iron and Steel group of the Institute as well. Has
Yeah.
that given you additional skills?
Yeah, it has. I mean, that I've always been a keen supporter of the Institute of Materials, Minerals and Mining in its various guises. I mean, I think professional qualifications are important in terms of self-development and kind of showing the world that you're a professional engineer. So I've always been very supportive of that. I I was asked to kind of chair the Iron and Steel group, which was a huge a huge privilege actually, because it's a group of like-minded individuals from across the UK steel industry. So all of the main steel companies, the main academic institutions, small research centres. It really covers the whole of the UK steel industry, and it's great to be involved in that. Obviously, the different types of characters that you have and different agendas, it's always interesting to kind of manage those politics. Let's be truthful about it. But I think, when you've got, and you must notice it as well, the steel industry in particular, I think the metals industry in general, the people within it are so passionate about the industry that you're really pushing on an open door whenever you want to kind of do something for the industry. So again, I'm privileged. There's a group of very, very well respected, highly regarded figures in the steel industry who come together a few times a year to work out what we can do to educate the youngsters going forward. I mean, what a privilege to be able to do that. And it's great fun, and I think really important to make sure that we pass those skills and that knowledge on to the next generation.
One of the things that we're looking at doing at the moment with the British Stainless Steel Association, where I'm chair, is actively getting the next generation of leaders coming through, as well as focusing on getting younger people joining the industry in the first place. And there are a lot of challenges for the whole metals industry there. Do you see that there are ways that the message is getting across better now to younger people than it was, say, 5 years ago?
I think we've got a perception problem, definitely, and I think that's probably actually got a little bit worse because, in my experience, youngsters today are absolutely passionate about sustainability as they should be. Of course, the metals industry, and particularly steel, has got a bit of a bad rep when it comes to sustainability. So I think we're certainly working very hard within Tata Steel to kind of turn that around a bit and say, look, come and help us on our sustainability journey. We need you. We need the bright young things of the future to help us to become sustainable and to reduce our impact on the environment. So I think that there's a perception issue that we need to get over there. I think there's also the more long-standing perception issue of, it's heavy, it's dirty, it's smelly, it's dangerous, all of those kind of things, which, there's some parts of it are, right? But there's lots and lots of it that isn't. So, we're both sat in very nice, tidy offices, and, that's...
You can't see the other side of my camera.
Yeah, and I got a pile of stuff over there. But I think we've got some work to do to get over those perceptions, particularly for women. I think that puts women off. And it certainly, when I go into schools to talk about, STEM subjects and careers in STEM, that sort of perception of it being smelly and dirty does put people off. And we need to get over that. But we need more engineers. We need more people entering the industry if we're going to have a future. It's really important that we get those skills in.
It completely is, and it's a future that we all depend on, because if all of a sudden metals stop producing tomorrow, whichever kind of metals we're talking about, nothing could happen in the UK.
No.
At all. Whether it's transportation, whether it's construction, food and drink, pharmaceutical, it just all stops without the metals industry. You mentioned there about encouraging more women into steel and more women into STEM. You've got an initiative called Women of Steel. Can you tell me a bit more about that, please?
Oh yeah, it's this is my new passion. We've actually been running the Women of Steel campaign, if that's the right word, within Tata for some time. But it's been quite an internal thing. There was a series of podcasts done, kind of showcasing some of the amazing women we've got in the steel industry. Obviously, COVID in lots of places had a massive impact, and everything went a bit quiet. But yeah, we did a big relaunch this year for Women International Women's Day, and it was again such a privilege to be part of it. We organised an event across the whole of the UK. You know, most people will know Tata Steel have got sites across the whole of the UK. We had external speakers in. We had I think we had 500 senior managers on that webinar, talking about, you know, the importance of bringing women in, some of the challenges that women face, you know, but most importantly took away from it some kind of commitments about what we're going to do differently. And it's created a real buzz in the organisation, and we're talking about equality, diversity, inclusion so much more now. And it's a really exciting time, actually, because I think there's the recognition that, you know, in all areas of diversity, the manufacturing industry can do more. I think there's a lot of women my sort of age in the organisation who are kind of saying, right, okay, we're going to start to make a bit of noise now and help those that are coming behind us. And we're really starting to get things done. You know, we're changing policies. We've just launched a menopause policy in the organisation, which I think, you know, for the steel industry would have been unheard of a few years ago. We're looking at, you know, carers. You know, what do we need to do to help carers? Obviously, flexible working is something that we've all adopted since COVID. So there's a real buzz and a real willingness across the organisation to be more diverse and more inclusive. And I think if big corporates like Tata Steel can do that, then it should really help the rest of the industry to make the whole industry more inclusive, not just for women, for any underrepresented group.
I think that's a really, really good initiative. And we all know that the numbers show that the more diverse your leadership team and your senior managers, the better productivity companies have, the more profitable they are, the better you retain staff. One of the areas I'd be interested what Tata Steel are doing in this area tends to be the sort of middle area. Senior women leaders normally can have access to quite a lot of support. Apprentices and junior people coming in, we've learnt the lessons, we're supporting them. It's women in the sort of middle stage of their career. Maybe you've gone off on maternity leave and are coming back and still want to progress. There's still a perception by a lot of companies and colleagues that they'll be running away to do the school run, and, you know, they can't come in on Friday morning because they've got to take, you know, a toddler to the doctors or something. And that's seen as a criticism of them. How are you looking to sort of change that perception?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is perception, as you say, and you know, I guess the sort of buzz phrase at the moment is this unconscious bias, but it is real. And it is a problem. I think there's I talk to a lot of youngsters, young women in the organisation, and they still do have this perception that, you know, you have to make a choice at some point. Do you want to be a mum, or do you want to be a senior leader in the steel industry? Now, I'm a mum. My daughter's 8, and you know, I do both, but not to say it's not a struggle, but you don't have to make a choice. You can do both. So I think there's some about people's perception, and, you know, to try and address that, you know, what we're doing as a company is getting people like myself and others who have done it to say, look, it doesn't have to be a problem. You can progress in the organisation. You can have the flexibility. I mean, I take my child to school every morning. I come into work when I've taken her in, you know, but it's making that visible to people. I think Tata Steel's got some great policy. I mean, there's nothing that prevents a woman who, you know, has maybe gone off on maternity leave, coming back and progressing. It's all about that perception and unconscious bias. So, and we've just got to keep plugging away at it. I mean, we've done a big session on big webinars on unconscious bias, and for men more than women, actually, to make them aware of it. And we're talking about it a lot more, looking at the data and saying, well, why is it that, maybe we don't have so many women in senior positions as we should do. What is it in our organization that's preventing those women from coming forward? And trying to understand it. I think, that's the first stage, is let's understand what is preventing people, and then we can do something about it.
You
But the
mentioned
really,
sorry.
sorry, go on. No.
I was going to say, you mentioned visibility as well. So for the younger women coming through, if they can't see the raft of senior women leaders that you've got, stepping outside your comfort zone to be visible, to have your voices heard, then they're not going to feel that they can do it. The more visible you are, the more they'll look at it. But if you can't be it unless you can see it.
Absolutely. And I think, that role modeling piece is so important. We were talking earlier. I certainly didn't have any female role models. And the one or two that I did have were following a path which I think many women have had to do, where you've had to kind of try and be a man to fit in. That wasn't a path I wanted to take. I mean, no criticism of people that want to do that, but that wasn't for me. And I tried that for a bit, and it was blooming exhausting, because you try and be something that you're not, and it's tiring. So I think that like you say, you've got to look around and you've got to see people, and you think, oh yeah, I like what she's doing, I like what he's doing, I want to emulate that in my career. If you can't see someone that looks like you, it's very difficult to be able to to work on those behaviors. So it's definitely a part of it. And I think we're certainly encouraging women at all levels to just, be visible. Mentoring, I do an awful lot of mentoring with youngsters on all sorts, career development, but also just that personal thing. What's it like to have kids and be a working mum? What happened when, after you took 6 months off for maternity leave, how did it feel coming back? Just that whole rounded experience of, how do you navigate your career through the changes that happen in everybody's lives, So it's
I think one of the things about coming back to work after maternity leave is all of a sudden you realise you might have thought you were a good multitasker before, but coming back to work after maternity, it just takes it to a whole new level. And the skills you learn just from having these two full-time jobs in such a short period of time is immense. So you've mentioned you can take your daughter to school of a morning. How else do you manage your sort of like work-life balance?
I mean, I'm really fortunate, and one of the benefits of having my child, later in life, is that we were in a position where my husband was able to give up work. So it's great. My daughter is now in a house where, mum goes off to work in the factory and dad stays home and looks after the house. I mean, what great role modeling. But so we're really fortunate in that sense, and I recognise not everybody's in that position. And if if you're both working and you've got to juggle childcare, that's a whole different level of complexity. But so I'm really lucky. I mean, it means we've made sacrifices. It hasn't come for free. We don't go off on big holidays and all that kind of stuff. We've made that choice. But I mean, I do a lot less traveling than I used to. I mean, I used to travel a lot with in various roles. I still do some traveling, but I kind of pick and choose what I do these days, because I don't want to be away from home so much. I've stopped working in the evenings and at weekends. Like I said, I always go to a sports day. I think it's about priorities, and I think when you have a child, your priorities change. And certainly up until the point that I had my career was very much my main focus. It's like, right, I'm just going to do everything I can to, climb the greasy pole. And then you have a child and you suddenly realize that actually, yeah, that's still important and that's still exciting, but that's not the main priority in my life anymore. So, and what I really found amazing, and, I say to people, is I started saying no, and the world carried on spinning. It didn't all come crashing down around me. So yeah, I learned the art of saying no.
Saying no is a very underrated skill. I asked this question of all the guests, and I think you're going to be one of the few who, if you look back at sort of like, a 15-year-old Laura, could you imagine this would be your career? I think you'd be one of the few who'd say yes.
Yeah, maybe not this exact one. I mean, I guess when I was 15, I know what engineering was? Probably not, but I knew I was going to be something sciencey. I probably thought I was going to be a vet or something at that time. But I remember having a conversation with I think it was my physics teacher about careers, and she sort of explained about engineering, and I said, oh yeah, that's the one I've been waiting for. Um, and yeah, not necessarily thinking it would be in the steel industry, but yeah, it was always going to be engineering certainly from sort of 16 onwards when I was doing my GCSEs. That was it. That was what it was going to be.
And when you took your parents' video player apart with a screwdriver, did you actually manage to get it back together and working?
I did. I did have a couple of screws left over, but it didn't seem to affect the functionality. So again, all good engineers know some of those bits are redundant. Like, you don't really need them.
Badly designed.
Yeah.
And the final question, Laura, what's the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh wow, I've had some really great advice over the years. I think the one that I'm kind of working with at the moment and has been a game changer, I think, is have the courage to be vulnerable.
Mm.
And I think particularly for women in a male dominated industry, it's very tempted to be the person who can do everything and doesn't ask for help, doesn't say no. And I think actually by letting people in a bit and being a bit vulnerable and asking for help, the quality of the relationships you have are that much stronger, and then you can really pull on them when you need them to help you. So yeah, that's one I've only learned probably in the past 2 years or so, but it's doing me well so far. So yeah, have the courage to be vulnerable, see where it takes you.
I really like that. Thank you so much, Laura. It's been an absolute pleasure talking
Oh,
to
you're
you.
so welcome. I've enjoyed it, really have.